Welcome to this reading of The Fir Tree by Hans Christian Andersen. This is part one. Out in the woods stood such a pretty little fir tree. It grew in a good place where it had plenty of sun and plenty of fresh air. Around it stood many tall comrades, both fir trees and pines. The little fir tree was a headlong hurry to grow up. It didn't care a thing for the warm sunshine or the fresh air, and it took no interest in the peasant children who ran about chattering when they came to pick strawberries or raspberries. Often, when the children had picked their pails full or had gathered long strings of berry threaded on straws, they would sit down to rest near the little fir. Oh, isn't it a nice little tree? They would say. It's the baby of the woods. The little tree didn't like their remarks at all. Next year, it shot up a long joint of new growth, and the following year, another joint, still longer. You can always tell how old a fir tree is by counting the numbers of joints it has. I wish I were a grown up tree like my comrades, the little tree sighed. Then I could stretch out my branches and see from my top what the world is like. The birds would make me their nesting place, and when the wind blew, I could bow back and forth with all the great trees. It took no pleasure in the sunshine, nor in the birds. The glowing clouds that sailed overhead at sunrise and sunset meant nothing to it. In winter, when the snow lay sparkling on the ground, a hare would often come hopping along and jump right over the little tree. Oh, how irritating that was. That happened for 2 winters, but when the third winter came, the tree was so tall that the hare had to turn aside and hop around it. Oh, to grow, grow, to get older and taller, the little tree thought. That is the most wonderful thing in the world. In the autumn, woodcutters came and cut down a few of the largest trees. That happened every year. The young fir was no longer a baby tree, and it trembled to see how those stately great trees crashed to the ground, how their limbs were lopped off, and how lean they looked as the naked trunks were loaded into cars. It could hardly recognize the trees it had known when the horses pulled them out of the woods. Where were they going? What would become of them? In the springtime, when swallows and storks came back, the tree asked them, do you know where the other trees went? Have you met them? The swallows knew nothing about it, but the stork looked thoughtful and nodded his head. Yeah, I think I've met them, he said. On my way from Egypt, I met many new ships, and some had tall, stately masts. They may well be the trees you mean, for I remember a smell of fir. They wanted to be remembered to you. Oh, I wish I was old enough to travel the sea. Please tell me what it really is and how it looks. That would take too long to tell, said the stork, and off he strode. Rejoice in your youth, said the sunbeams. Take pride in your growing strength and in the stir of life within you. And the wind kissed the tree, and the dew wept over it, for the tree was young and without understanding. When Christmas came near, many young trees were cut down. Some were not even as old or as tall as the fir tree of ours, who was in such a hurry and fret to go traveling. These young trees, which were always the handsomest ones, had their branches left on them when they were loaded on carts and the horses drew them out of the woods. Where can they be going? The fir tree wondered. They are no taller than I am. One was really much smaller than I am. And why are they allowed to keep all their branches? Where can they be going? We know, the sparrows chirped. We have been to town and peeped in the windows. We know where they are going. The greatest splendor and glory you can imagine awaits them. We peeped through windows. We've seen them planted right in the middle of a warm room and decked out with the most splendid things: gold apples, good gingerbread, fun toys, and many hundreds of candles. And then, asked the fir tree, trembling with every twig, and then, what happens then? We saw nothing more, and never have we seen anything that could match it. I wonder if I was created for such a glorious future, the fern tree rejoiced. Why, that's better than to cross the sea. I'm tormented with longing. Oh, if Christmas would only come. I'm just as tall and grown up as these trees they chose last year. How I wish I was already in the cart, on my way to the warm room where there's so much splendor and glory. Then something even better, something still more important is bound to happen. Or why should they deck me so fine? Yes, there must be something still grander. But what? Oh, how I long. I don't know what's the matter with me. Enjoy with us while you may, the air and sunlight told him. Rejoice in the days of your youth, out here in the open. But the tree did not rejoice at all. It just grew. It grew and was green both winter and summer, dark evergreen. People who passed it said, there's a beautiful tree. And when Christmas time came again, they cut it down first. The axe struck deep into its marrow. The tree sighed as it fell to the ground. It felt faint with pain instead of the happiness it had expected. The tree was sorry to leave the home where it had grown up. It knew that it would never see its dear old comrades again, the little bushes and the little flowers about it, and perhaps even not the birds. The departure was anything but pleasant. That will be the end of part one. Part two to follow tomorrow.